Hey everybody, Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for Gamingtrend.com. I realize that you're looking at my desktop, and that's actually on purpose. Today we're going to be checking out the functionality of the OBSBot Tiny 2 Lite, a 4K camera that fits in the palm of your hand and sports a litany of features beyond anything I would have expected from a consumer-grade PTZ camera. Now I could sit here and talk about it, but I'd much rather simply show you precisely what I mean. Let's wake it up. Hi there. So the first thing I want to clarify is what PTZ stands for. PTZ stands for pan, tilt, and zoom. Now PTZ cameras are not something new, but they're normally something that you see in a corporate environment. If you've ever been into a conference room and you saw that the camera is able to focus on each one of the users as they spoke, that's a PTZ camera. They're normally, well, about yay big and extraordinarily expensive. This camera, on the other hand, is about this big and, well, it has tricks. Now let's go through some of these tracking features together. I am staring at my screen over here, so I'm kind of controlling things from behind the scenes. Think of me as like a, I don't know, terrible Wizard of Oz. So there are tracking methods here: standard, motion, normal tracking, upper body, and close up. Now these aren't toggled simultaneously. Standard does not track me off camera as smoothly as motion does. It's looking for large motion. It's not looking for kind of more subtle motion. Upper body tries to focus on kind of this whole area and not necessarily close up. I did run into a bug with close up. Let's see if I can demonstrate it. This does have the ability to zoom, right? So I'm going to tell it to zoom in and out, but you'll notice that it's having trouble focusing on what I'm trying to tell it to do. And that's not something that you see unless you select close-up, so I think it's a bug. We'll see. As they do patches and updates, we'll see if that goes away. I've also run into another bug where when I hit reset down here, the camera wanders off in a different direction, and we suddenly find ourselves in some David Lynchian nightmare where it's flipped everything black and white and grainy. Thankfully, it's super easy to fix. We're going to go in here into the image and simply reset the image and the white balance, and now I'm back to my pallid corpse whiteness that I normally have. So moving down here, we do have presets, which I'm going to go over in just a moment. The gimbal, you saw me moving that around. There's a zoom right here, so you can control just how close you want to get. It will get extraordinarily close. That digital zoom is extraordinarily good. It's not obviously moving a lens, but you can see that it does stay pretty clear even when you move in to a tighter zoom. So I also have wildly insufficient lighting in here. This is simply the overhead lights from my fan. So people with better lighting are obviously going to get better results. Moving on to the next section here, we have image, and we can enable HDR. It's going to give you at least a better range of colors. HDR is not going to fix anything, but it will give you better color correction. If you're doing post-production work, HDR is nice because it's going to give you the full gamut of color ranges for you to adjust. Focus, obviously we have this set to autofocus and on my face. Global obviously looks more at the entire environment. I've been very careful with using global because there's obviously movement above me with my fan. It may focus on that. When I put it on face, it stays locked on my face. Exposure, this is trying to keep my face, as I said, my pallid corpse-like look. It's trying to keep the light compensation the same. Like I said, the wildly insufficient lighting in here, you can make adjustments. I don't know why it turned itself all the way up. That's a little bit better. I don't look quite so washed out. Anti-flicker, please turn this on. I have seen entirely too many videos where you have this kind of banding effect where you see like this kind of grayish band go up and down like this. This anti-flicker fixes that. For PAL TVs, that's 50 Hertz. And for those of us in America, that's 60 Hertz. So when you turn this on, it will try and correct for any monitors or something that you see in the background or TVs, and it will fix that flicker, and it'll also stop that banding that you see. White balance and image, obviously this is where you can go in and make adjustments. The defaults are pretty good, but let's be honest, every camera I've ever used has required at least some tweaks to get perfectly clean on the image, and they give you all those options, or you can simply hit auto and let it do the work for you. Moving on to the More tab, we have Device Initial State. And what that's going to do is what I just mentioned, where it's just going into this David Lynchian nightmare. There's a way to fix that. So I can say, this is my position. Start here. Okay? Instead of where it's headed, I can say, please start right here. The camera, by default, we're going to go down and adjust the contrast again. Yeah, it just wants to gray things out, and I'm not sure why that is. But as you can see, you can go in here and you can say, I want to stick to normal tracking or no tracking or whatever. You can adjust all of these things as the initial state of the camera, and you can even say, I want to zoom in. But we're going to set this as my normal state, which pretty much alleviates the bug entirely. I'm going to go back to image and reset that. There we go. So under More, you've got all those options under the initial state. Device sleep, I'm not going to hit that because it will actually put the device to sleep. But one of the things that I really like about this is that I'm going to show you a different camera to demonstrate this, something we'll review later. The lens points down when it's in a sleep state. And that ensures that you know by simply looking at the device that it is asleep and not capturing anything. And you also have the option to adjust the camera's internal microphone and say, I don't want you to capture audio while you're asleep as well. Although you can use things to wake it up with your voice, obviously you don't want that maybe capturing something that you might want to keep confidential, and you can simply turn that off. Sleep time, you can set this to go to sleep. Obviously, you probably want to turn this off if you're streaming or something like that and you don't want to, maybe you're on break and you don't want to wake the camera up and reset everything. You can simply adjust this, or you can change it to however long you'd like. Sleep background, you saw the sleep background with the little dude on the cloud, but I can easily adjust it to just black, or maybe like a Gamingtrend logo. If it comes out backwards, you can flip it. Lock target, these are the gesture controls that I showed earlier. You have a couple of different gesture controls. This tells it to look here, and it does that. You saw that it did readjust from kind of a lower position to looking at my face. And if I move over here, it's going to take a look. What you can't see is there's a small blue light on the camera itself, and it's letting me know, hey, I did make that adjustment. It blinks and lets me know without needing to walk up here and mess with the controls or have a second person do this for you. You can see that visually on the camera. Now, I did mention that there are some other ones. You can go like this, and it's going to zoom in. So I'm not sure why it's the loser logo, but it does work for zoom, and you see the same thing on the camera where it does blink the light to let you know, I recognize what you're trying to tell me, and I'm going to go ahead and move in. Now, you can also do this and this, but that's the other problem that I've run into. In works really well, out not so much. Let's see if we can get this thing to pay attention. Zoom out a little, come on. There we go. So zoom out seems to be a little problematic. I've gotten probably 5 or 6 patches since I've gotten this camera about 2 weeks ago, and they've fixed a number of things that I've had to kind of go back and re-record because they're just simply ironing them out. So they're very focused on making this a perfect implementation for a PTZ camera. Going down here, you have zoom factor. That's going to adjust how fast and how far that zoom that I just demonstrated works. If you don't like the push in and push out, you can adjust that direction flip, and dynamic zoom is done like this, and that's going to adjust how much you zoom in on an object. This is what I mentioned earlier, microphone status during sleep. I want it off. You can do noise adjustments, which is nice. You can obviously integrate this with OBS, it's kind of in the name, but where you can apply all sorts of noise gates and compression and all that sort of thing, or you can do some of the noise reduction right here. Automatic gain control, disable the microphone. Radio distance, this is where maybe you have it in a conference room and you're far away from the person speaking, so you're going to want to have it try and reach out a little bit further to focus on the person that's speaking. Mirror image, obviously that flips the image. View and gimbal reversed, and you can click on these and it's going to explain what they do. It controls the direction of left-right rotation of the lens. So again, if you're trying to direct the camera to move in a certain direction, you can flip that if you wish. Indicator status, that's the little light that's on the camera that explains what it's doing, and you can turn that down if that's distracting. Firmware version, the upgrades are over the air, so you simply click the button and it firmware upgrades. It's incredibly simple one-click button kind of thing, or you can go in here to manual upgrade and install those manually. Export log, that's simply what you think it is. It's for sending the logs to the team for troubleshooting. Moving to the next button here, that's go to sleep. This button here starts recording. We're recording via OBS right now, so I'm obviously not doing that, but when we do get to the review on this particular camera, you can record natively to the device. The OBSBot Lite, not the purpose of that, so this will record directly to your computer. There are a number of ways that you can make this far more powerful, so we'll return to this record thing a few times. This here is a virtual camera. When you're setting things up in OBS, you might need to enable a virtual camera for a number of reasons. I've never had to do that for this particular camera, but there are other cameras that I've used that I need that. It's an option here. This is where things get interesting. Now I need this beauty tab. There are a number of options here to retouch your image to allow you to look a little prettier for the camera or simply blur out things in the background. Bokeh is a camera effect that effectively gives you kind of a hazy background for your image and creates some depth. We're going to go ahead and turn that on. Adjust the blur level here. And you can see that things are now a little bit more blurry in the background. You can go really high. You'll see this on like a Zoom call where somebody doesn't want to have their background visible, and you have all of that all set up. You can see that it does tie into the NVIDIA Video Effects SDK, so if you wanted to get really fancy, you can jump in there. Retouch. This gets really interesting. So native, classic, man. So funny names aside, it's trying to give a different look to your image, and you can see that it does kind of control shadows, and it controls kind of color depth, tone, smoothness, but there's more to it than this. Tone, smoothness, clarify, slim, and narrow. So let's go into face. Where is it? So watch whiten. It adjusted the whiteness of my teeth ever so slightly. Eyes, cheekbone, nose, mouth, whiteness, nasolabial, so that's the fold right here in your nose. You can go and adjust those things, and you can see, especially between native and classic, you can see there's a slight softness to my face that wasn't there before. So I've said it many, many times, everything you see on the internet is fake, and now even more so. But it doesn't stop there. Makeup. You can add lipstick. Super weird. Blush. I'm not sure why you would want to do this digitally. It seems like something, even if you did it subtly, you could get caught. But an option. Contouring. Natural contouring, 3D contouring, fancy contouring. And I'm turning it all the way up, which obviously is going to give you the most extreme result. But you can see an adjustment. I'm kind of having to look at the camera and also look at the controls, so just excuse me there. So they're not huge adjustments, but they're adjustments. All right, we're gonna hit restore back to normal. Filters. So these are filters for the light levels and color levels. These are kind of the filters that you would apply maybe on a camera or in post-production, where you can get a different look. Some of these are better than others. Black and white, soda, whatever that means. And you can obviously turn these up to a ridiculous level as well, which is going to give you the most extreme result. And that being the natural one. Now I'm going to find there is one other option that I want to show you with the facial adjustments that are simply just wild to see in motion here. Let me find it real quick. Slim. Okay, watch my face. Now I've lost weight, but here's a way I can lose more. Okay, that's turned all the way off. And all the way on. The effect is subtle enough where people might not catch it unless they see you in person. But yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing. Now, we've all seen the fails on these things where suddenly somebody will move in a way that causes the filter to malfunction. Don't be that person, where the room suddenly distorts and time and space no longer matter, and your door behind you suddenly warps and then snaps back into place. We notice those things. Not only that, but at some point you're going to meet the people that you're seeing on camera in person, and they're probably going to notice. So just be yourself. I mean, that's all you really can be. All this stuff is just window dressing. Now this last button gets really interesting. These two buttons here, now I wish they would tooltip a little better. OSC and can't remember what this one is. If we turn it off, maybe it'll tooltip. Either way, something to fix, OBS team. These should tooltip, and they should tell users what they're for. OSC is open source controls. Now, you might notice that there's a 1, 2, 3, and 4 up top. This software, using the open source controls, can control 4 cameras. Now, let me bring this up here. Right now, we only have the one OBS Tiny 2 Lite camera, but I can add other cameras. And I can connect this to a server and run all of this to a server instead. Now we're getting into a completely commercial application level of use for this camera. This camera that was up until this point very much a consumer level camera. Suddenly it can play with the big boys. It can integrate with a much larger version like this one. I'm looking forward to showing you that other camera. It's going to be very cool. Output. This camera does support a number of resolutions, but as I'm going to demonstrate, I'm going to make this, I'm going to move this off screen, and then I'm going to maximize this because I'm going to mess with the resolution here. So we're at 4K 30 right now. Oop, hello. All right, so it snapped a little bit. 1080p 60. So we're 60 frames per second. You can see that, especially with hand movement. Fingers are still distinct. It's a very clear image at 1080p 60. Should you need to, and there are times when you need to. 1080p 30, we see the filters snap a little bit, we see the colors adjust. This is a good demonstration because it does demonstrate just how much this camera will compensate for terrible lighting. And again, you see a little bit of ghosting around my fingers. It's not as clean as the 1080p 60, but it's still a very clean image. Now, for whatever reason, maybe bandwidth, I guess, if you're streaming live, 720p 60, we're gonna see this snap, snap, snap. It's not that bad an image. You see a little bit of graininess around my face, and certainly the image behind me is not as clear, but you still get that 60 frames per second. You still get the smoothness of motion, and at a lower resolution. I guess if you're shy, maybe. 720p 30 goes all the way down, and you lose the 60 frames smoothness. I'm not sure why you would use these lower modes, but they are there. We're gonna pop back up to 4K 30. So that's the maximum right there. For smoothness, 1080p 60 is really clean. Now, if you do happen to be using this camera for things like, I don't know, TikTok, something that requires a different orientation, you have landscape and portrait. Let me drag this back down here. Let's put this back where it was. Landscape and portrait, I did mention those. Now I'll actually show them. If you wanted to shoot portrait and you wanted to be able to upload to things like TikTok, well, there you go. It does support it natively. In fact, when you first fire it up, it's going to ask you which one you normally use. So you can start where you want. Recording bitrate, you can do a lower bitrate if your PC can't necessarily keep up with this. I can't imagine for the life of me when you would buy a PC that's not able to keep up with this camera, but you may have this with a laptop and that's a whole different situation. This is where you go make that adjustment. The recording bitrate, you're obviously not going to have as clean of an image, but it is an option should you need it. Recording format. Now, I'm recording on OBS, which is going to give me whatever format I'm using on OBS, but if I were recording with this camera natively, you can adjust a number of different recording formats: MKV, MP4, MOV, FLV, MKV, AVI. My recommendation, especially if you're new, stick with MP4. Most editing software natively supports MP4. MKV is kind of shaky. AVI and MOV, those are huge file sizes and for almost no benefit. So MP4, 99 times out of 100, that's your image recording format. Obviously, you can set the location of where that's going to go, and I have that set to a large hard drive. Switching to the audio tab, you can see that I am using the OBSBot Tiny 2 Lite internal microphone for capture, but that is obviously not my only choice. I have a number of other capture options due to the AverMedia live streamer Nexus that I have sitting over here. So I'm going to pause here for just a second, and I'm going to switch to that so you can hear the difference between what is a very large microphone versus the super tiny one that fits in a camera this big. All right, now we switched over to my cardioid microphone over here that's going to my AverMedia setup, and that is a very different sound. There is one disadvantage though. I lose all of the follow functions. So if I move around the room, it's dependent on this microphone doing well with that, and obviously that's going to be hit or miss. So we're going to go ahead and switch back to the Tiny 2 Lite because that is what I'm trying to demonstrate here, but I did want you to hear the difference between the two microphones. There is an option down here for audio monitoring. So if you have a third person or second person doing audio monitoring, they can turn this on and they'll be able to get that audio pumped directly to a second device like a laptop, so they can listen in their ear and go up, down, whatever that is, to get you to speak louder or cool it down some. Global hotkeys. Now, there are a number of keys that you can set up on the keyboard that allow you to very quickly activate things, turn things on, zoom in, zoom out. This is useful, but not as useful as a true control panel. That open source control panel, there are a number of them out there that you can put on an iPad or something similar like that have radio dials, and you can pull in the audio and video streams and be able to see your levels and everything else. This is useful, and thank you for including it, but there are much better ways to manage this if you've got a second person doing all the work on this. So, but if you want to go in and adjust this to your heart's content, knock yourself out. The OSC, so this is that open source connection. This is how you're going to connect to another device to control the camera, or in the case of having multiples of these, multiple cameras. Thank you for the switch there on the background. The open source camera controls are super useful, again, if you have multiple cameras from multiple camera angles, and when the devices are wireless, such as this other thing I keep teasing, being able to put that thing anywhere and then control it remotely, super awesome. I am so glad that they include this, because this bridges that gap between a device that's simply made for consumers and something that's made exclusively for a commercial environment, and it kind of melds the two together. So it's very cool that they included that, and thank you very much for doing so. General settings, this is literally just what language are you enabling the hotkeys? Do you start it automatically with Windows? That sort of stuff. So this is kind of what you see is what you get. So now we're going to go ahead and add a device, and I'm going to go ahead and get the other device that I've kind of been teasing from OBSBot, and that's this boy. That second device that I keep alluding to is the OBSBot Tail Air, and that's this device. Now, this device, compared to the Tiny 2 Lite, the Tiny 2 Lite is about this tall. It's just this bottom portion. This is obviously a much bigger camera, but it has a lot of features that the smaller device doesn't have. But of course, we're talking a large price difference between the two. We'll get into pricing and warranty and all that stuff at the end of the video, but I did want to take a second and kind of explain why you would want either one of these cameras. Now, you're working from home. Think about what you want to project when you're working from home. You're effectively saying, I'm just as good out of the office as I am in the office. Let me have the work-life balance of being able to work from wherever. Now, part of that is having a really clean image. And almost everybody that I see at work uses a terrible camera that they got 15 years ago, or they use the one that's baked into their laptop, which is probably 1 megapixel, 1.5 megapixel. Awful cameras, awful audio. Okay, so you're creating this image of yourself where people see that awful image and that awful audio, and they're going to associate that mentally with you. And just simply saying that, is that what you want? Probably not. So this allows you to break that and create a professional image. Obviously, you're probably going to wear more than a t-shirt, and you're probably going to clean this up or use that bokeh filter, but you're creating that professional image, and you're doing so with a camera that does a great job of capturing who you are and what you look like. Obviously, if you're a streamer, this is going to be a different situation. You simply want a good, clean image with good tracking that can keep track of you. Maybe you do 3D printing videos like the large 3D printer that I have over here, or maybe you do a lot of stuff where you're walking around. This works well for sports. It works well for a number of different activities that can just simply require tracking. So kind of my impromptu OBSBot commercial aside, let's talk about the OBSBot Tail Air. Now the Tail Air is a very different camera than the Tiny 2. This is a commercial level camera. This really is meant for just the highest end. So if you are a high-end streamer, first off, thanks for watching my channel. I appreciate it. And second, this is the device for you. This camera is especially useful because, I'm gonna turn it on right now, it does not require a connection. So I can set this anywhere and it is ready to go. It is able to spring to life, which you can see it's powering on right now. And this thing is ready to go. It's actually ready to track and ready to do work. So I can simply say, I'm gonna set up an interview right now, set this on a post, turn it on, I am ready. And you see, it just came to life over the air. So we see it appear here as my second camera. We see it light up right there. I couldn't have planned that better. So I'm gonna set this over here and create a second angle, which might be terrible because it's going right underneath my microphone, but let's give it a try. So camera number 1 is the Tiny 2 Lite, and camera number 2 is the Tail Air. So we're gonna switch to the Tail Air, and it did so very quickly. So I just created a second angle. Now I've obviously not set this up at all. You saw I just turned it on for the first time. I did go ahead and do the firmware updates and adjust everything, but I've not set up the images. I've not set up any of the options that I want. So obviously work to do, right? But I wanted to demonstrate, this is the out-of-the-box experience. And it does have the same, well, I guess I gotta turn it on. It does have the same tracking, but there are a number of things that it can do that are much better than the smaller camera. And of course this comes at price. But the first one that you're seeing right now is that it's able to track, and it's able to track very, very quickly. So this is the camera that you would set up for your sports event. This is the camera that you would track a basketball game or track and field or whatever else that you want to be able to track that moves very quickly. Martial arts, whatever that is, this will track it. And as you saw, it's completely wireless. Hey, I guess this gives me an opportunity to do this. Let's turn off the tracking. And right there is the OBSBot Tiny 2 Lite. So as I said, very, very tiny. Sorry, I don't have a banana for scale, but there you go. I'm gonna go ahead and set this back to tracking, get its attention, and we're good to go. It's complaining about the SD card. We're gonna get to that in a second. Now, this does have a number of ways that you can connect the device. You can connect it wirelessly, which obviously I've done. You can connect it via a HDMI mini connection in the back. There's an included USB-C port, and there's even an audio jack on the very bottom of the device, which allows you to, why am I saying this? I guess I could be showing it to you. One second here. So we'll switch to the OBSBot over here, and you can see there is the SD card connection right there. There is the micro HDMI. Here is the USB-C, and there you go. There is the audio jack. So you have a number of different options for keeping all of this connected and tracking. All right, I've got to adjust that image because it is awful right now. So as you can see, there are a number of much better options for image quality on this camera than you found on the OBSBot 2, but it does require a little work to set up. So daylight, fluorescent, tungsten, cloudy, or custom, you can adjust that white balance. Auto kind of mutes the room a little bit, but that probably is close to the natural lighting of this room, which, as I've mentioned multiple times, is terrible. And then tracking. So right now it's human tracking because last I checked, that's me. You can do the same thing with upper body and close-up, but you can also do animal tracking. So maybe you run a dog show. This would be a perfect camera for setting this up. You could set up a number of these and have all 4 of them tracking critters that are running around, or you can group them together. We're gonna get back to these presets, I promise. I keep promising that. We will get back to those. It has the same gimbal options as the OBSBot Tiny 2 Lite. And you might have noticed when I had it on the other camera that it does have a light on there. Blue tells you that it is tracking you. It's keeping its eye on you. Whereas if it turns green, then you know that that is a different device. So yeah, there we go. So this does have a recording option directly to the SD card, unlike the Tiny 2 Lite. So that makes it truly wireless. You could set this up with a faster SD card than the one I put in it and simply hit record, or it can snap images, and you can define exactly how you'd like that to happen. Maybe it's on motion, or maybe it's tracking the whole thing, but that's an option for you to keep track of. Yep, it's completely complaining about the little card for sure. Sorry, I'm sorry. All right. Under image, as I said, you have a number of options. If you do want to limit the ISO, that is an option here. If you've ever taken any photography classes or done any work with a camera, being able to adjust that kind of floor and ceiling of the ISO, it's useful. It does have the same anti-flicker options. This green tracking box, you don't see that on the final shot. You're just seeing that because I'm recording it in OBS. We talked about white balance already. Image, this is where you can go and make adjustments. You can say standard, outdoor, pastel, custom. I think it's keeping track of this. I think it's bothering it. So let's get it out of the way. All right, so you can go in here and you can make adjustments. That is really just complaining about that. You can see here that that power button that once put all of them to sleep, now you can decide whether it puts everything to sleep or just one device to sleep. That's the record button that I mentioned earlier, where you can record natively, or you can record with OBS, obviously. This is where you can do the output. You can say, I want to record from all cameras, or I just want to record from some cameras, and then simply light that up. So this is useful if you want to be able to stitch together a video and have multiple camera angles and say, you know, I think I got the right angle, but I don't think it was this camera. I think it was this camera over here. You'll have both of those things, and you can simply lace them together using your third-party camera or third-party editing equipment. This is very similar to what you saw with the other camera, where you had the device initial state. You could say I want it to automatically power off or automatically power on. UVC, this is something that is between UVC and NDI. These are some of the things that make this camera more of a commercial application than a consumer grade application. UVC and NDI are typically what you'd use for having like a large control panel that keeps track of your different cameras and allows you to tally between them and create that kind of production quality, broadcast quality type experience. I'm doing a bad job of showcasing this because I think it's because of the lighting. This does have the same camera controls, although it does have locked target, so I can say lock on me, whereas somebody else can say lock on me and it'll zoom over to them. So that's useful, but it is gonna stay tracked on me. Then recording, that will start recording. I'm going to go ahead and disable that because I don't want it to start recording natively. Zoom in and out, dynamic zoom, we talked about all that stuff. Built-in mic, microphone, noise reduction, gain control. So you're seeing a lot of the same options here. Plug unplug to power on and off. So this is unique to this particular device. If you want it to be able to automatically turn on the second that it's powered on and be ready to go, that's that option. SD card management, you can decide, I've got a 128 gig device in there, and you can have it chunked up, so if you want it to be 4 gig chunks or 64 gig chunks. This is really more about how painful it is to pull into a third-party editor like DaVinci Resolve. It's going to choke on something as large as 64 gigs unless you have a lot of memory. Maybe you have a laptop and you want to say, I want it in 8 gig chunks. It'll be less painful to import. Moving on to the beauty option, you have the same options that you had before. So native, classic, and man. As well as custom, where you can go in and adjust people's faces. And you can say, I want to adjust camera 2, but I want camera 1 to be different. So maybe you've got a certain subject on camera 1, and you have a different subject on camera 2, like maybe you're doing an interview and you have it from 2 different angles. This would be how you control that and say, I want this lighting and this effect on this person, and then I want a different effect over here on this other person over here. So that's the adjustments that you can make with that. And then this is the controls that we talked about earlier. So what I'm going to try and do now is I'm going to try and get these 2 cameras to match, and then we're going to talk about presets. Alright, so it's simply not possible to get these both to match without bringing an entire lighting rig in here. This is really a good demonstration of the differences in lighting and how much of a difference it can really make. But moving on, we're going to go ahead and set this to split, and you can see both camera angles, and you can see that I've got a face filter applied on this one and not on this one. So you're able to see very quickly, especially if you're a second person doing this and you have multiple cameras, you can see which one is doing what, and you can also see what filters might be applied or if there's an adjustment being made. So we're going to go up to console, and we're going to start to set presets. Okay, so remember, these are both pan, tilt, zoom cameras, and you may actually have multiple times where you want to be able to say, I want the cameras to all go over here, or I want them to all go over here, or I want them to split. And that's where you can adjust these. So we're going to rename this, and I'm going to say, I would like you to focus on the FL Sun printer, right? And that is not the FL Sun. So we need to obviously adjust it. That's the FL Sun. So I'm adjusting this camera to say, focus on this 3D printer. Maybe I'm wanting to show that this is something that we're tracking, right? We're going to say update, and I now have a preset. Then I'm going to say preset number 2 is I'm going to brag here for just a second. We're going to say zoom in on a couple of years ago I passed my 4th degree black belt. So we're going to say rename 4th dan. Okay. Now with a simple click of a button I can say boom, jump over here to the 3D camera or the 3D printer, boom, jump over here to my black belts, and then preset 3 wherever that decides to be, right? So you can simply set wherever, and you can say the initial state should be on this sign that I got while I was in the military that says don't enter or we'll shoot. I guess this demonstrates why you would need to flip an image, because obviously that is backwards. So this is where you go in here and you can start to apply different effects, including flipping it or adjusting the tracking or anything else. So that is what the device states are for, and obviously you can do that for both cameras or all four cameras if you're inclined, and you can simply have this kind of professional presets where I want to snap to this, then I want to snap over here, snap to this person, and be able to very quickly move the camera to do exactly that. And the last thing I want to focus on is this, remote control. Now, there are certainly, so check that out. You recognize that I want to be able to show this off, and it's zoomed in on its own. I didn't touch anything at all. So probably could work on focus, but getting there, right? So this little remote control allows you to adjust a number of things. For one, it says 1, 2, 3, 4 across the top. Now these 1, 2, 3, 4s, I'm gonna try and adjust that focus here. Let's see. I'm gonna say narrow. See if I can zoom that in some. Maybe, maybe not. Again, lighting makes all the difference in the world, so I apologize for that. You'll have to just follow along. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that allows me to switch between cameras. Then it says P1, P2, P3. Well, those are the presets that we just set. You have a full gimbal control here, as well as a record button. Right, you hit that, recording starts. Plus or minus, well, that's zoom, right? Track, close-up, hand. Not sure what that is. Page left, oh right, I'm sorry, this is for controlling PowerPoint. So you have controls over PowerPoint as well as switching pages in your PowerPoint. So you have a full controller here, and it does have a laser in it. So connecting this up, simply throw in a set of batteries and connect this USB dongle. So let's do exactly that. All right, went ahead and plugged in the remote. Let's see if we have any reaction from the software. Since I'm doing all of this live, I have no idea what's going to happen. Just kind of how I do. All right. Remote controller. All right, so the remote controller shows that it is enabled. We've already purchased it. Remote control keys may conflict with some software. Yeah, got it. Maybe it simply works. It does. It simply works. Gotta love it when something just works. So obviously I have full control over the camera, and I can simply use it to switch between my camera angles. Simple as that. I can start my recording. I can use those same presets that we set earlier. And if I were running PowerPoint, well, I'd be able to do that too. I can zoom in, I can zoom out. This right here allows me full control over all my cameras as well as my PowerPoint. If you're going to run PowerPoint, do not do this. Nobody needs to see the back of your head. Nobody wants to read the bullets on your screen. Memorize that stuff and simply put images that convey the same message and speak to your audience. Talk to them, don't make them read. When they read, they stop listening to you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Please use PowerPoint correctly. Anyway, enough complaining. This is super cool. Having this in my pocket will be a very useful tool, especially when you're running a one-man show. Being able to very quickly say, let's switch over to my other camera. Oh, is this gonna make a liar out of me, or can it not see my... No, it just lost tracking. Well, like I said, bugs to be fixed. Now I do need to talk a little bit about price, but I think it would be unfair to do so without explaining some of the other features that differentiate the Tail Air with the Tiny 2 Lite. Now the Tiny 2 Lite is $179 and the Tail 2 Air is $499. Now that's a pretty big spread, right? Well, there are a number of reasons why you would want to spend $499 versus $179, and that is the commercial application of the Tail Air. For one, it has a number of connectivity options beyond the ones that I was talking about, which is NDI support. NDI support allows you to do network controlled cameras. So this device can be plugged in via the micro HDMI that I mentioned earlier, which is great because you can simply plug it into a console like an ATEM switcher if you happen to be a Blackmagic fan. Or you can even power this thing with power over Ethernet. So you can run with an adapter, which the adapters are, looks like $99. You can run power over Ethernet directly to this device. You could stick it upside down and have a remote security camera that can track everything in your store. Now, any security device that you go to purchase right now, I guarantee you will be 5 times the price and 1/4 of the capability as this little camera. So even if you bought 4 of those things, it's still going to be cheaper than anything you can buy, and the image quality will be significantly better and the tracking will be superb. And with NDI, you don't have to push it to a device that's in your store. You could push it to the cloud. You could push it really anywhere you want. Anywhere that you can assign an IP, you can throw it with that. Now there is an option, there is a license that you have to purchase to do NDI, and that is no different than this camera than any other. That license is $99. So you're starting to get some add-on prices that can kind of bite into things. This is $79, and frankly, they could have priced it at $99 and it would have been worth it. The ability to do a one-man show and switch between things. I realized that I had kind of lost sight of my PC, which is a little further under there. I have a really thick desk with steel on the bottom, so I had lost tracking on this. So that's my fault, not the OBSBot stuff. Anyway, but that's $79 for that device. You can get clickers that just do light and switch your PowerPoint for like $30 on Amazon, but being able to control the entire shebang, that's pretty awesome. Now I did mention that you can record to a micro SD card, just like this, but the one that I threw in there simply was one I had laying around and it wasn't fast enough. If you're wanting to record 4K 30, you're going to want something very fast and you're going to want a lot of storage. Depending on how you're storing your video, if you want it to be MP4 or MKV, MKV is going to take up a lot less space. Just not as easy to manipulate in something like DaVinci Resolve. So it really depends on what you're planning to do with the video after you're done. But this doesn't have to connect to anything. You can simply plug in that, capture all your stuff, unplug that, and take it with you. That is useful if you plan to use this maybe for hunting. If you want to go scout a blind and you want to be able to put this out in an area and just kind of keep track of how many animals go through that area for hunting, well, knock yourself out. You can do that. This isn't weatherproof by any stretch of the imagination, but it will do all the tracking and it will store everything locally. So that is an option. Now there is an app that you can put on your phone. I'm going to go ahead and fire it up here. And hopefully it'll simply connect, which is what it's supposed to do, which it did. It's now searching for, oh, that's going to be awful on screen. Anyway, so you're going to have to take my word for it here until I can get into it, but there we go. I have full control over the camera now directly from my phone. So I'll have to switch to camera 2 so you can actually see what I'm doing here. But I have full control over that directly from the app. That's something that's supported by the Tail, but is not supported on the 2 Mini. And I can see audio levels here. I can simply hit one button to go to UVC. I can track, I can enable AI, really any of the functionality that I would expect to use on a computer, I can simply enable from my phone, which again, if you are out in the field and you want to be able to very quickly and easily control this device without needing to have a PC with you, that's a great way to be able to do that. This is again an opportunity where you can say, how many times am I going to get to meet this particular person? You drop this device, you start hitting record, and you have a full interview with that person without the need for any other device other than that. And it comes in this case. So you've got this extraordinarily portable camera that you can simply pop out, hit start, and you're ready to go. The biggest use that I've seen for this camera, especially the Tail Air, is churches. Now, if you go to church, and if the church is large enough, or it doesn't actually have to be that large now, you can take this camera and you can place it anywhere. So if you had somebody come in and they're going to play the piano, you can fire this thing up, set it on the edge of the piano, have it capture the person's face while they're playing, and have a second one capture their hands while they play the piano itself. And it doesn't require any wiring, it doesn't require anything special. You simply turn those on, let them wirelessly connect, and you've got all of that footage captured, and nothing special to put those in place. And then when you're done, you simply pick them up and take them back and put them wherever else you want to be able to capture whatever else from your church sermon or whatever house of worship sort of situation you're in. Again, the portability of this and then being able to do it without a single wire is amazing. You can also think of situations like an impromptu thing like a street fair. So you're doing a demonstration where maybe you're cooking something and you're out at a street fair. There's no power and there's no connectivity of any kind. This is a device that you could simply plop down and you could record the person cooking. You could have a conversation with the person while they're doing that, capture all of that, control it all with your phone, and be able to offload that when you get back to someplace that you have connectivity. So you can start to see the differences between something that's wired, like the Tiny 2 Lite, and the OBSBot Tail, where you have that kind of ultimate portability and the ability to be completely spontaneous with a completely gimbal device. So I hope this was useful to you. I'm showing off two very, very different cameras and two very different use cases, and you can see that there's a world of difference in their features, but there's also a pretty big difference in their price. In both cases, we encountered a number of bugs. There's issues where maybe tracking isn't quite as good, or when I hit reset on the Tiny 2, it swung around and turned black and white. Who knows why that happens? Software developers will have to figure that out. So it's good to see that OBSBot is constantly patching. I'm seeing a lot of activity for both the software, the firmware for the camera, adjustments for the tail for a number of different activities, for adding functionality or new ways to tweak that AI algorithm. So they're clearly heavily invested in this product, and that's good to see. It does mean that you might have to maybe use some adjustments to pave around some of the current issues, but I wouldn't call any of them a deal breaker. So again, I hope this is useful. I'm Ron Burke, Editor-in-Chief for Gamingtrend.com. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you again very soon.